Have you heard this thing about in Florida where they want the people who are on welfare to take drug tests? People, oh yeah, I think they should take drug tests. You know, they're getting welfare money and they need to take drug tests. Well, fine. I don't have any problem with that. But why don't you give drug tests to these corporations that get welfare too? Why didn't we go into Bear Stearns and AIG and all these other folks that got bailouts and say, oh, well, yeah, we're going to give you this $800 billion, but all y'all got to take drug tests. I bet you they would have found some folks on drugs in some of those corporations at Wall Street. I bet you that. Why didn't they do that? Because, oh, that's not welfare, that's a bailout. Come on. If you're going to do it for poor folks, have drug tests for rich folks too. Rich folks take drugs. Rich folks take a whole lot of drugs. So test them too. 300 to 500 to 1 in 2000. Here's number 2. It says a USA Today analysis of government data has found that paychecks from private business shrank to their smallest share of personal income in U.S. history during the first quarter of 2010. During the same time period, government benefits, Social Security, Medicare, unemployment insurance, and food stamps, rose to a record high. A record high, the first quarter of 2010. A whole lot of people get laid off. A whole lot of people find themselves with medical bills they can't pay. A lot of folks now are even talking about it. Even your beloved Democrats. And I'm not a Republican or Democrat, person. I don't espouse one, all Democrat, all Republican. I pick whoever's operating in my best interest. I don't care what they call themselves. Politics is about self-interest. So don't say just because I'm talking about Democrats, I must be Republican. Don't even put a label on me. I don't believe in that liberal conservative stuff. We should be about winning in politics, not just playing. So the beloved Democrats now are talking about cutting Medicare and Social Security and all this other stuff. And that's like the third rail of Democratic politics. You don't touch that. That's Franklin Roosevelt. You can't be touching that. But now, you hear some conversation about it. But anyway, it rose to a record high because a lot of people got laid off. A lot of people had problems. A lot of people got sick, couldn't pay, didn't have insurance. I was at a hearing at City Council that talked about Bootsy and Patty Collins' nephew, Kyle Willis, who died from a tooth infection. How in the world in this country, the richest country in the world, can a person die from a tooth infection because he or she doesn't have the money to buy the antibiotic that would have cured the infection? Now, people are going to come up with all kinds of excuses. Oh, they should have done that. He should have done that. The fact is the man didn't have the money, so he had to make the choice to buy a painkiller or an antibiotic. And of course, there are resources in the city that would have given him the antibiotics free and everything, but he didn't know about that. Apparently, the people who took him to the hospital didn't know either because they took him to a hospital that gave him a list of dentists to go see. And he died the next day. So it's about information, of course, people understanding what's available, but hospitals need to know that too, right? They took him to a hospital that didn't provide the free service. But that's another show as well. But how in this country do we have folks who are going through this? And he wasn't the first one that died from that. There were other people that died from it as well. Number 3, according to the United Nations, the United States now has the highest level of income inequality of all of the highly industrialized nations. The highest level of income inequality. It says 4 of the biggest banks in the United States, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Citigroup, had a perfect quarter with 0 days of trading losses during the first quarter of 2010. I don't know if you've seen the latest data on these banks and how we've now come to a point to where we have 4 or 5 banks controlling everything, big banks controlling everything. It's like those cartoons we used to watch when we were kids where the fish would come along and eat another fish, then a bigger fish would come and eat that fish, and another fish would come, and all of a sudden you see this big old fish, he ate all of them. Well, that's what happened with these banks. And of course, they got their bailouts, and then they didn't lend the money, and now they're saying they're sitting on trillions of dollars and all this kind of thing. The rich get richer, and the poor get poor. According to economists, Piketty and Sayes, 2/3 of income increases in the United States between 2002 and 2007 went to the wealthiest of 1% of all Americans. The wealthiest 1% of all Americans received 2/3 of the income increases. Have you gotten a raise lately? If you have, I bet it's no more than 2%, if that. Social Security didn't have a cost of living increase for 2 years. I understand that next year in 2012 there will be one, but this is this is shameful. Let me see a couple more. For the first time in U.S. history, banks own a greater share of residential housing net worth in the United States than all individual Americans put together. Banks own a greater share of residential housing net worth in this country. There are about 10,000 people who show up. Just over one 3-day period, approximately 10,000 people showed up to apply for just 90 jobs, making washing machines in Kentucky for $27,000 a year. In the United States of America, the richest country on the planet, despite the financial crisis, the number of millionaires in the United States rose to a whopping 16% to 7.8 million people in 2009. Over 1.4 million Americans filed for personal bankruptcy in 2009, which represented a 32% increase over 2008. Not only that, more Americans filed for bankruptcy in 2010 than during any month since U.S. bankruptcy law was tightened in October 2005. You remember when they changed the bankruptcy laws, made it harder for you to file? I did a show about that in 2005. And now we see that in spite of those laws that make it very difficult for people to file, there was a vast increase in people who had to file bankruptcy. You know, bankruptcy is a funny thing, especially among black folks. I remember hearing conversations between my mother and father about it, you know, a little bit, what they knew about it, but it was like taboo, especially among black people. Oh no, you pay your bills, you don't file bankruptcy. I mean, that was like the absolutely last resort to file bankruptcy. And somebody recently said, bankruptcy, when I was in Washington on this panel at the Congressional Black Caucus, one of the bankers said, bankruptcy used to be a stigma, but now it's a strategy. Think about that. It used to be a stigma, and I think among black folks it still is to a great degree, but now it's a strategy. People plan to file bankruptcy, especially these big businesses. Folks who are well off, they use it as a strategy, a business strategy. But oh man, we can't do that. Oh no, we can't file bankruptcy. But you saw, based on what I just read, more Americans filed for bankruptcy in 2010 than during any month in the U.S. since the bankruptcy law was changed in 2005. Just a couple more. A staggering 43% of Americans have less than $10,000 saved up for investment. 43% of Americans, I'm not talking about black folks, 43% of Americans have less than $10,000 saved up for retirement. Now, I'm not sitting here as some kind of great paragon of economic empowerment, individual economic empowerment and all of this. I've made a whole lot of bad decisions during my lifetime, but I've tried to learn from them and not only help myself, but to help others by doing things like this, by writing 4 books on economic empowerment, by starting an entrepreneurship high school, by starting the Black Chamber and other chambers around the country, by doing the TV show, by writing a news column for 16 years on economic empowerment. Just because, and people say, well, you're not a millionaire, what you? No, I'm not, nowhere near, not even close, But it doesn't mean that I can't share information that I have. Why should I be so selfish about things that I know, in spite of the fact that I'm not way up there, and I started to say 1%. I'm not even up there in the, I don't know what you call 50%, but that's okay. I've been blessed in my life to be able to still be here and do this, and I'm happy with that. I'm not trying to hold myself up as some kind of model of personal economic achievement. I haven't done that. And I don't purport to be that model of having done everything right. But despite that, I feel that if I have some information I can share with someone who might help them get to that point, even beyond where I am, that's fine. I rejoice in that. I rejoice in seeing brothers and sisters do well. I have no problem with that at all. So I'm willing to do whatever I can to help in that regard, based upon what I have. We have time, we have talent, we have treasure. And whatever we can share with one another, I think we should. So that's my take on that. I just wanted to share that with you, because some people look, some cynical folks, well, what is he doing? Or does he have this? Or does he? Well, I wonder how much he has, and all this kind of stuff. Hey, believe me, I'm down there with the majority of folks. With the majority of folks. But the blessing is that the more I give, the more I get. The more opportunities seem to come my way. Don't seem, they do come my way. I believe in that. I believe in the law of the harvest. I believe in doing right by other people. And as Charlie Winburn always says, the more people you help, the more people come along to help you. And I just believe in those kinds of scriptural principles and biblical principles. And I try to live by that. No, I'm not perfect. Don't do it correctly all the time. But I believe in it, and I try to practice it as much as I can. And I have found that the more I give, the more I get. Now, I'm not trying to tell you to do everything I do and all this. I don't preach to people about that. But I just try to share information. And if it works for you, that's fine. If it doesn't, you do your thing. But I'm just telling you, it has worked for me, and it's really blessed me to be able to share this kind of information with my daughter, who took it in and reluctantly sometimes, followed it. And now she tells me, I'm really glad that I listened. I'm really glad that I made the right decision. What you were telling me, and part of the things I was telling her was about this college bubble. Those of you who've been keeping up with the economy know that there is a college bubble. And it was about a year and a half ago, I talked about this, and I shared it with her. And I said, look, a college degree is not worth what it used to be worth. And understand that people are getting out of college owing as much as $80,000, $90,000 in debt, sometimes much more than that, owing that much money. You can't bankrupt out of that money. You're going to be paying it when you're 70 years old if you're still working and you haven't paid it off. So I don't want you to go to school and graduate with a lot of debt. She worked very, very hard, and I hope you read this article that she has in the Cincinnati Herald. She worked hard, and I give her a ton of credit for working hard to keep her grades up so that she would be eligible for some scholarships, and she did quite well. She got scholarships. She got full scholarship to Howard, plus she got about 16 local scholarships and national scholarships from places like Walmart and Lowe's, not because they just liked her. She did the work to get it done, because I kept telling her, you don't want to get out of school owing a lot of money, because first of all, a college degree is not worth what it used to be. They're overpriced, and to graduate and owe $75,000, for instance, and not be able to get a job, you know what the job market's like. What is that going to do to all of our students who are graduating now with an overpriced degree that they've went into debt, serious debt, to obtain? It's leaving them in a very, very bad situation. And when this college bubble bursts, we're going to see the same kind of thing that we saw when the housing bubble burst. So keep your eyes on that and teach your children now. Just put it into their heads, drill it into them. Do your best now. Take these tests, do your best on the ACT and the SAT. Do your best to raise your GPA. Don't waste those years, because that's what's going to attract money. I used to tell my daughter all the time, you do your part, and the rest will fall in place. Have some faith, understand what I'm trying to teach you about faith, and money will find you. Money will find you. And she was very discouraged at first. Oh, I'm not getting any call. I said, don't worry. Money will find you if you do your part. And sure enough, it happened. And I just thank God for it, because there's no way my wife and I could have paid for her 4 years school. I mean, we didn't have enough money saved up for 4 years. We had some saved for her for college, but not 4 years at the rates they charge now. We couldn't have done that. We would have had to go into debt. She would have had to go into debt